John, and Tamlynn, who have joined us today to explore this critical topic. As we all know, landfill waste management is a key challenge for policymakers and planners in the development of smart, sustainable cities due to the use of land and emissions to the surrounding environment. As it stands to date, only 2% of global climate finance is directed to methane emissions, methane mitigation. Despite contributing nearly half of warming, existing finance is not strategically targeted, with only 0.5% of this being focused on the energy sector. In the waste sector, funding is a significant issue, particularly in developing regions such as Asia, Africa, Latin America, as most of the investments are in incineration, which is 80%, and only 19% goes to landfill sites. Furthermore, the absence and inadequacy of supportive policies and robust regulatory frameworks hinder the adoption of methane mitigation efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, this panel discussion will explore finance opportunities and barriers to upscale zero waste as a climate solution, with particular emphasis on methane reduction, while connecting local needs and national and international drivers and understanding the economic benefits of zero waste implementation. We have quite an interesting session ahead of us, which explores ways in which finance can be leveraged to address climate crisis. So let's dive in. Our first speaker for today is Berliana Yusuf from the Climate Policy Initiative in Indonesia. Berliana will be sharing insights on methane climate finance map for the waste sector, while also highlighting the landscape of climate finance, challenges and findings on methane abandonment finance flow. Please join us in welcoming Berliana Yusuf.
Habari za asubuhi. Habari yako? Okay, so that's as far as I can go with Swahili. So I would like to thank you for the organizer, especially Gaia, for inviting us to speak in this event. So as you can see, this session is focusing more on finance. There's actually an interesting relationship between waste and finance flow. Anyone notice? Because I just noticed I think the last few days. Okay, so in terms of waste, we want to make it at least as possible, right? We want even to make it zero. But if in terms of money or finance flow, we want to make it as much as possible, right? So we want to mobilize as much financing as possible to have the least waste as possible, right? So I think that's very interesting relationship. So how do we measure the finance flow then? So this is exactly what I'm going to present today. We track the financing flow. Like our organization, a climate policy initiative has started global landscape climate finance since 2012, and Methane is subsector of it, which we only started in 2022. So I will present the findings of our landscape methane abatement finance. Okay, I think I won't. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think most of us, if not all, have aware why we need methane abatement. So I won't go through it one by one, but I would like to highlight the objective why we are doing the finance tracking. Okay, we want to know like the trend in financing for methane abatement. So that's why we started the tracking of the finance flow. And we also want to know the progress. But if you want to know the progress, we need to have the baseline, right? So at the first tracking, we measure the baseline, and then we plan to do like annual finance tracking to know the progress and also the trend. And by doing this, we hope that we can also like mobilize finance where it needed. So if there's a gap or like potential for more methane abatement, we can mobilize the financiers to go toward that. Okay, these are the data sources that we use. We have like main sources and also some additional sources. As you can see in the table, like, there are many main sources from the OECD, Bloomberg, climate bonds, and we use additional sources to cross-check and also fill in some data gaps. And for the data classification, we use the CCAC and UNEP classification. There are like three main sources of methane that we like track: fossil fuel sector, waste sector, and AFOLU, agriculture, forestry, and other land use sector. And we, in the waste sector, we focus on the solid waste management and wastewater treatment. And this is like the general finding. So in 2023, the good news is the methane abatement finance has reached its highest level, which is like 13.7 billion. But the bad news is, if you want to achieve like the target of under 2 degrees, then we need to achieve at least 3.5 times higher by 2030, and even higher by 2050. So it's a lot of work. Okay, this is the detail of the finance flow. You can see at the left side that the private sector is still dominating the finance flow, which is like more than double of the public source. And most of the private sector goes to the AFOLU residues, and then to solid waste and livestock. Whereas for the public source, most of it goes to wastewater management, followed by solid waste, and then AFOLU, and a little bit to livestock. In terms of destination, the most region that get the finance flow is from East Asia Pacific, just like 5 billion, followed by the US and Canada, and Western Europe, and then Middle East, Central Asia, and Sub-Saharan. So the least region that is serious is South Asia, I think only 0.07. In terms of financial instrument, the market debt rate is still dominated the financing with 46%, followed by equity, concessional debt, and only 2% from grant. For this is for waste sector specifically. Most like the least finance flow go towards organic waste management, only like 1%, followed by solid waste to energy with targeted waste, 5%, and the highest goes to solid waste to energy with undifferentiated incineration. Interesting, huh? So if we compare the finance flow with the abatement potential, you can see that finance flow doesn't really proportionately go to the highest abatement potential. You can see that waste sector actually has more mitigation potential in terms of methane abatement, right, with 22 million ton of methane, but it only receives 6.1 billion compared to AFOLU, which only has like 20, so 2 million ton less, but receive more. And in terms of finance flow, for waste sector specifically, actually the financing for the cost for operational expenditure is much more, like 75% compared to the capital expenditure. But most of this finance flow is for capital expenditure. So there's also a gap there. In terms of region, so Latin America and South Asia has the biggest gap of potential and finance flow. As you can see, like Latin America here and South Asia has like 13% of methane emission contribution globally, but they only receive 2% and 1% of finance flow. So there's a big gap there. Okay, now when we do the finance tracking, there are some gaps that we are facing. I will not go through it by one. So I would like to highlight some. Like the first data gaps is the ability to quantify actual methane abatement, because most of the projects that we track is a new project, right? So we cannot really verify yet the actual of methane abatement of the projects. So it's still like from the assumptions. And the next is the lack of standardized reporting in the sector. Like in the waste sector, in Afolu, there are like different standardized. So it's like it makes the data collection more complex. And also in terms of the access data sources, you know that I presented like there are many main sources, right? So even that the data is different, so we need to adjust it. Okay, so last one, recommendation. So since it is financing, you can actually read the all with I put the link here, so you can access the report. So there are like three main actors that we highlighted: public, private, and government. So the main part is we should, change regulation, promote R&D, and make the methane abatement embedded in the strategy of each actor. And we should also like deepen the investment opportunities in the methane abatement and improve the MRV, because that's also, if you want to measure the progress, we need a good MRV. Okay, that's all. Asante.
Indeed, methane abandonment is critical in identifying methane leaks and reducing landfill explosions. However, financing operational costs of the waste sector seems to be a major challenge. Thank you so much, Berliana, for the informative presentation. Now to introduce our next speaker, we've got Ira Purnomo, who's the co-convener of the Low M Finance Solutions team, and she'll be sharing about the Low Methane Initiative, as well as the opportunities behind it. Thank you.
Hello, habari za asubuhi. Hello everyone, my name is Ira. I'm also at Climate Policy Initiative, just like Berliana, but here I would like to present more on Low M, which is Lowering Organic Waste Methane Initiative. Who here knows already about low methane? Raise your hands. All right, I see already a good part of audience. That's very good. So why are we doing this? So we actually see from COP26 and also from the Global Methane Pledge, we know that methane has been something very important to address. So we're taking this momentum and take it into action. So this is why we're gathering a lot of collaboration with partners, with jurisdictions, so that we can mobilize finance and have ambitious goals to reduce methane in the waste sector. Okay, so what is the vision of Low M? So here, I will just talk about the big numbers. So the goal is actually to cut 1 million tons of annual methane emissions from the solid waste sector before 2030. And this will require unlocking up to $10 billion in public and private investment across as many as 40 jurisdictions. Here on the bottom left, we have the jurisdiction engagement model, where there are 3 steps. First, we need to identify a clear and ambitious jurisdictions target for waste methane reduction. So from there on, we go to step 2. We identify high priority actions to achieve targets. So there are several actions. And from there, we take several actions and then we partner with several organizations. We have the policy and technical team, we have the finance team, we have the data team, and we want to mobilize and align support for the delivery of key actions. And here on the bottom right, this is the unique impact that LOM wants to address. There are 4 of them. So first, we want to send a clear message that waste methane is a global, national, but also local political priority. So this is why we want to also engage with subnationals. Second, we want to crowd in resources and boost partner coordination. Third, we want to enable multi-level collaboration between national and subnational. We want to ensure that these actions not only happen or are committed by national level, but also will be implemented at subnational level. And finally, we want solutions that can scale up and out beyond low-M jurisdictions. So here's the current structure of low-M. There is 4 layers. So on the core, you have the core team, the executive decision-making, the strategy, and it consists of 5 executives, and one of them is among us. It's Donovan from CCIC, and then there's also from GMH, Carolina, so the colleague from Tebogo, and then there's also from C40, 2 from C40, and also from, C40, GMH, yeah, I think I covered everyone. Okay, and then in the second layer, you have the coordination support. So these are specific roles in the delivery, in the analysis, in the tracking, etc. And there's also support for additional support, for example, for communications and also coordinating the thematic teams. So these are part of the coordination support. Then there's the design group. Some of us, some organizations here are part of the design group. So they meet monthly and they also give inputs on any strategic or advises on what they're doing and any solutions they want to give. And then there's the general member. So the general member, they meet less often, so quarterly, and they also want to give inputs, but they're just less involved in the whole process. So, and then there's also the policy technical teams, or we call it the jurisdictions team. They are working groups. I think in the previous presentation before the break, we had Lagos, and there's also a working group on Nigeria, so that's one of them. And then there's the thematic teams. The thematic teams, there are 2. The Finance Solutions team, where CPI and C40 are co-convening. So if you are part of the Finance Solutions team, you'll hear more from me. And then there's the Data Solutions team. The coalition members, again, there's a lot of organizations that are participating. And if you are not part of them and you want to be part of them, please let us know, because we're not an exclusive, per se, membership. So if you feel like you can contribute, then you should probably join us. Okay, so here are the waste value chain of low-M, from upstream, where the waste is generated and what you can do about it. So you can either reduce food loss and waste, and then second, in midstream, this is before landing in the landfills and in the dump sites, what you can do. So separation or treatments by composting, anaerobic digestions, BSF, or recycling. And then third, in the downstream, is in the landfill or in the dump sites. So what you can do methane capture in sanitary landfills, you can close dump sites or cover dump sites. And then the green boxes here on top, these are what we call the low methane levers. And here you can see that there are benefits coming out of each green boxes. So these benefits are, for low-M, we call them more like co-benefits, because our main benefit is to reduce methane. So the co-benefits can be about food security, about increasing air quality, about increasing health and sanitation. But in some jurisdictions, the narrative is different. They actually perceive those co-benefits as their main benefits, and then methane comes second. So we just need to adjust how to approach the jurisdictions. And then another note here that I would like to make is that incineration is not considered a low methane levers, but it's also not a high methane pathways as well, so it's yellow. As we know, I mean, we are mostly, we mostly don't accept incineration, of course, but Low M is not in the business to advocate or support incineration, but we're also not in the business to tell jurisdictions what to do. So if a jurisdiction has several actions to take to lower methane, and one of them is incineration, then we will just highlight the other ones. Okay. For the jurisdiction criteria, I have not much time left, but I will go fast. The criteria, we need a mitigation opportunity. So we want a jurisdiction that has high ambitions, high numbers, and then we want political commitment and interest in collaboration, since we will collaborate with several organizations and partners. And we want something quick, fast. We want results by COP29, by COP20, and of course we want more results by 2030. Some updates since COP28, since last year on the jurisdictions. Right now on forefront, we have Lagos in Nigeria, where we have both subnational commitment, government commitment, and also national government commitment. This is really, really important. After that, we will identify the Low M portfolio, the methane abatement potential, and also the investment needed. Okay. And some jurisdictions don't have the same level. Some have national government commitment, but not subnational, and some have the reverse. Okay, some updates on Lagos. So we already completed identifying a clear, ambitious jurisdictions target, where Lagos wants to reduce emissions by 30% by 2030. They want to reduce open dumping and burning of organic waste by 50%. And now the progress is that we want to identify the actions, the high priority actions. And after that, we'll go into mobilizing partners to align support for the delivery of the key actions, and then key actions and track progress. Okay, so the data solutions team here is, I think it's led, there's several organizations here. If you want to be part of it and you're not here, please let us know. But here, the data comes actually from satellites, so it's emissions, tracking emissions from the satellites. And I think I want to highlight as well that it needs to be balanced by ground data. For example, zero waste cities systems can also contribute to data, so that there is also ground data, and then there's satellite data, and then we can find something in the middle. And then here, the finance solutions team, that's where I am. So it's co-convened by C40 and CPI. The remits are to demystify waste methane finance structural barriers. We want to identify existing innovative solutions. We want to help bridge funding supply from Low M partners with funding demand from the jurisdictions. And right now, we are currently in progress of developing a scoping paper to address these key barriers and bridge the supply with the demand. So the vision for COP29, we want at least one jurisdiction to have access to finance to reduce methane in the waste sector. Okay, I will not go through it because I think I'm already over time. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Asante Sana. If you have any other question, please let us know.
Thank you so much, Ira. Since our topic is on zero waste and climate finance, we thought it would be only fitting to find a man in finance with a trust fund, 6 foot with blue eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to our next speaker, who is Mr. John Morton from the World Bank. He'll share insights from the bank about zero waste systems and how finance instruments can support these systems. Please give him a round of applause.
Thank you very much, habari za mchana. So I'm not going to talk so much about methane, but more about zero waste and decentralized models. And I'll highlight some situations that we tend to see. I think it's not meant to be universally applicable, but and in fact, because some of them have solved the problems that I'm highlighting. So, but I'll just walk through some of the dilemmas that we run into when we try to finance zero waste in these decentralized models and some solutions that can be provided. So, so one thing that's important is when we look at, especially in the solid waste sector, is that we're not necessarily just providing investment financing. We're introducing services, because most of the costs end up being on the operational side. Most of the issues are on the operational side. Financing, procuring infrastructure and equipment and stuff is not difficult, but implementing it is. So whenever we look at an investment, it's important to note that it's about introducing an urban service. And it may be an urban service that's run by the informal sector, but we're talking about services, not necessarily just investments. And then just a little, I won't go into the details, but some of the things you need to look at when you're designing a service is who's in charge? What's the administrative model for all of it? Is it the municipality? Is it a public company? Is it a local jurisdiction of some sort? How is it organized? How is it financed, which is what I'll talk about today? The technology, what education capacity building is needed, what are the socioeconomic issues that might be facing either the service providers or the service receivers, what incentives you need, and how do you evaluate it. All of these are part of the design. It's not just so much purchasing a piece of equipment or building an MRF or whatever. It's about seeing the whole system and how it works. So I'll just talk about the finance for the most part, but it's important to note it's all integrated. Okay, so one point, and I sort of highlight a little bit of what the model here that Nipifigio has put together. They learned they could separate a 90% within a year, that's one big dilemma, because oftentimes it takes 10 years to get all that done. They were able to do it in a year because of its community-based approach. There's a lot of innovation in this space, more than what a municipality can offer, for example. So there's a lot of benefits for that. Lower costs than having a big compaction truck that runs around the city. You can use manual labor, etc. And then, especially, in a lot of cities that we see, and especially I would say Dar es Salaam, transport costs are a huge problem here. A lot of the waste doesn't get out to the dump site, not that that's a solution, but because of transport costs. So they save on transport costs because it's decentralized. There's a lot of great advantages in efficiencies from these systems. So, and then another important part is that what are the costs of solid waste management? So you see if I can dissect this diagram. This is a system, for example, that we might have in Dar es Salaam now where there's not a formal landfill or there's a dump site, there's lack of collection, etc. So what are the public costs there? We have the methane emissions we've talked about, the CO2 emissions we've talked about, but also even the litter on the streets causes people's perception of their neighbors and their neighborhood to go down. It reduces the sense of community. It reduces land values. It's more costly. And there's health issues. So those are all the public benefits below or above. Below is sort of the operational cost. It's a relatively low cost system because the disposal site doesn't work, they don't collect very much, etc. But there are costs to the municipality. So all of these costs of solid waste management exist. If you introduce landfill, transfer stations, even composting facilities, whatever it would be at the centralized level, you'll have less impact on the global benefits for sure. But they'll still be there. There'll still be greenhouse gas emissions. There'll still be, littered areas of the city, etc. But the operational costs will go up significantly. So all of these are costs of, even though there's all these benefits from it, the very worst cases that we see is you have children picking on the streets, or you have people that don't have other employment opportunities, and we're taking advantage of their low-cost labor, which is free, and their poor conditions. Other things that oftentimes happen is we build a composting facility and it's empty. And then the more successful models still have issues of donor dependency, they're not fully scaled, irregular revenues. These are challenges. They function, but they could function better. So if we have all these benefits, why isn't it reaching these groups? And why are we not taking advantage of it? So what can we do? So one is internalizing these costs. So the public costs, we talk about climate finance. But also in Europe, there's regulatory requirements simply say this is a public good, we need to do it. Importantly is integrating it into the tariffs. So if people are paying for waste management, then these systems should benefit from those tariffs somehow. It needs to trickle down, and it doesn't always. As well as how the contractors work. If you put in a big contractor that would collect all the waste in the city, and it takes away from what these people are doing and they get no benefits from it, then that can be done better. So the next part is legitimizing it. So like I said, this is a service. Whoever's providing it is a service and it provides benefits. So within that, a legitimate job needs to be provided with recognition, better working conditions, and advocacy for people, as well as integrating them into social support structures, et cetera. That's important. And professionalizing these services in some way. So that's another thing that can help. And then finally, scaling the services. So we have lots of nice pilots, but how do we institutionalize it? How do we build the markets for recycling, composting, et cetera, to support that? And how do we build good business models, providing financial support, either through investments in operation, better incentives, legal and financial, for people to participate in providing the service and in receiving the service. And then communications, and then finally tapping into the innovation that exists there. And again, this is a very innovative group, space, as we can see by this conference. And how do we tap into that at a city level? So, Shante Sana.
Thank you, John. Ladies and gentlemen, next time we have Tamlynn Fleetwood from the Urban Future Center at Durban University of Technology in South Africa. Tamlynn will be sharing learnings from a project that is recovering organic waste from an early morning market in Durban and composting it at Durban's botanical gardens. This program has proven to be successful and is currently expanding as part of its, and she'll be reflecting on the success of the project and how it's saving. Thank you.
Right, hello everyone, Salaam. Yeah, thank you for inviting me to the conference. It's a pleasure to come and chat to you about our project. We're very proud of what we're doing in Durban, South Africa. Right, so I can control the slides, that's great. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about our composting project. Definitely got the composting fever, but actually the composting is part of a broader zero waste project that we're implementing in Durban. You saw Asipile chat yesterday about the waste picker integration work, but we also do a lot around organics. This is the second phase of the project. So what we're doing now, in the first phase, we demonstrated zero waste models, closed loop models. In the second phase, we're taking the successful ones and scaling them up. So the organics was one of that. This is our case study site. We're operating in the city center. We've got a large informal marketplace in our CBD. It's made of 9 market sections. One of them is the early morning markets, and that's where we sell our fresh fruit and veg. And we've got 9 of those markets spread out across the city. It's a lovely market, very vibrant, a lot of foot traffic, very bustling space, with no waste management really. So it's absolutely fallen apart. So it's an interesting case study actually to try and do a zero waste project. What we did in the first year is basically just focused on research. Spent a lot of time doing participatory research with street traders, informal workers, waste pickers in the area, understanding what are the waste flows, what are the quantities of wastes, and trying to think about what's already working in those systems that we can build upon and upscale. Very quickly we saw that organics was a big, major problem coming out of that market. But as we've seen over the last day and a half, that's a quick win. And composting is a relatively low-cost, low-tech method. So that automatically caught our eye, and we thought, what can we do with a closed-loop model around organic waste management? So then we did a little bit more research, just focusing on that market sector. Spent a lot of time in the bin area doing ethnographies. Then we did a widespread survey with all the informal traders in that market, getting to know how they understand waste and the link to climate change, but also training traders up as peer researchers, because that helps with the advocacy and the buy-in from the informal workers. And once we got that done, we invited our waste pickers from SALPA to come and help us do a granular baseline audit of that waste. So data is very important in our study, and we track the data meticulously. So we spent a lot of time weighing and counting bins in that bin area, and then for a period of time dumping those bins out, separating the waste, weighing the different waste streams to get some accurate data that we could extrapolate so we understand what's coming out of that market. So basically we're seeing in that market space about 400 tons of largely uncontaminated organics going straight to landfill. That was the case. There was a smaller bit of recyclables as well that some waste pickers were already diverting. So in our brains, we were already thinking, right, so there's a unit that manages the market, our business support unit. They pay our waste management unit in the city to take that waste to landfill. So theoretically in our minds, we're like, okay, about 90% of that is organics. If we can take that for free and compost it, that's a 90% drop in their bill. So that was how we first sort of got our foot in the door to speak to the city and say, could we experiment with this? Are you interested in reducing your waste management bill? And then we decided we needed a few other partners, because to compost we need space, we need a garden waste. So that's when we decided to approach our parks department, and we've got a lovely Durban Botanic Gardens that was about 2 kilometers away from that market. So it's important for our model as well, efficiencies, as John has just spoken about, to keep those loops tight, because then it's less transport costs, really. So we don't have many operational landfills that are still open in our city. Most of them are closed. The one that we send this waste to is kilometers away, about more than 60 kilometers round trip. So CSW, our cleansing and solid waste unit, was interested in this as well, because this is a win-win all round. So BSU, if we did this model, would save money on their waste management fees. Our parks department was also paying CSW to take garden waste to landfill, and they were buying compost. They weren't making compost, so they were spending, right? And then, of course, CSW paying the transport fees, the fuel costs, and that precious landfill airspace, which they're trying to conserve as well. So when we put all the partners together and pitched this, there was interest in it. But Parks wasn't immediately interested in taking 400 tons of waste straight off into their pristine botanic gardens. So that took a little bit of convincing. And what we eventually got them to agree on is that we took 1 bin a week, one 240 wheelie bin of organics, and we just got them used to the process. So the Parks truck comes to the market, collects the bin, and then we started making small little compost piles and experimenting like that for about a month. 4 months, actually, sorry. Getting our recipe right, getting our relationships right, and getting the operations right. And then slowly there's buy-in, and we're bringing more people in. We started scaling up. So this is where we're at now. So we moved from small piles to our first windrow at the end of 2022. And then from then it was actually quite simple. So we weren't given a big space. So we can fit 12 windrows at the moment. We've got our recipe down so that we can make compost, mature compost in 3 months. So we collect now from the early morning market twice a week. We mix that with the garden waste at the Bot Gardens, and every week we have about a ton or just over a ton of compost ready to go, and we give that back to Parks for free. So it's not an enterprise model, it's a savings model, and we'll talk a little bit about the economics of that now in a second. But we've actually got a waiting list at the moment from Parks staff who are interested in that compost. And that goes to community food gardens across the city. It also goes to beautification projects to make the city look beautiful. So there you can see we've diverted 95 tons so far of organic waste and produced 55 tons of compost for Parks. But that's actually accelerating if you look at it over the months. Now we've got an MOU with the city, which we're very proud of, and we got that quite quickly, and I'll talk for 3 minutes on how. But we're in our new market now, the Bangladesh market. We're doing the same thing. We're doing the research. When I get home, we'll do the baseline audit. The site has been identified. We've got another park site. So this scale-up will happen quite quickly, and then we'll move to the remaining markets. So you can see there on the map the 9 markets. We're in the southern cluster now. We'll tackle those in the next year or 2, and then we'll move north. So that's the goal. That's the MOU. So the MOU is with the university where I'm from, groundwork where Asapile is from, and then 3 units in the city, CSW, Parks, and our business support unit. How did we get that MOU? It was really around the cost-benefit analysis that's been done on this project. So when we first approached our finance officer in the city right at the start, it was a terrible meeting because we were punting the social environmental wins, and he just kept on saying the numbers. Give me the business case. And we were like, it's not a business. We know, we're not trying to start, and he wouldn't listen. But actually it was a frustrating meeting, but it forced us to get an economist on board to start looking at the numbers, and that was a game changer. So he's done a thorough cost-benefit analysis, our economist Paul, basically looking at what are the costs and benefits of the status quo, what are the costs and benefits of the model that we're proposing. My word. So we had 3 scenarios that he actually put forward. We're on scenario 1, which actually relies on little to no capital investment. We use the equipment that's in the city, which is aging and limited, but we make a plan. At the start, we thought that maybe we needed scenario 2 and 3, which have since fallen away, where we had this idea that we needed a lot of trucks and concrete flooring and shelters, etc. That actually, if we have time, I'll tell you why we don't need that. Here you can see projected over the 10 years. It speaks for itself. Basically, when you look over time, the benefits hugely outweigh the costs. It's saving the city 4.5 million, I think, a year for them to service all those markets, just the BSU unit. For those of you that are economists that understand accounting talk, I'm not an economist, but I'll do my best to answer these questions. But what I do understand is this net present value. Any businessman who sees a proposal where the NPV is over 1, they say to themselves, that's bankable, that's an investment, that's a project we want to invest in. So you can see even with the most expensive scenario, which was millions of rands in infrastructure, NPV is still over 1. So this was the game changer for us that got the city interested. So I think, in summary, what's quite unique about this model, it gets a lot of attention, but it's a really simple concept, actually. eThekwini, like many of your cities, is cash-strapped. We have no resources. There's no money to put in. You can't ask for much, and we don't have business partners that are coming forward to invest. We're looking at the system to see what money is already in there. How can we unlock it by just working more efficiently and working across silos, which our government wasn't doing much of before. Frugal solutions, efficiencies, unlocking the municipal savings that are there. The last point I want to make, and it was quite good of us, I think, in the MOU, we had it written in there that for BSU, any savings that they accrue from this project must be reinvested into that market to improve the infrastructure in that market. So you're improving the social protections of those informal workers. You can put things like ceiling fans, for example, which will reduce food waste to start with. So that is written in the MOU. So now in the second phase, the trick is to get them to start. We've made the savings. We can show the savings. We're tracking that. They must reinvest it in the ways that we agreed. So, thank you.
And that brings us to the end of our very insightful discussion. Before I hand it over to the program director, can I just ask the speakers of this panel to meet at the corner for a quick photo? And over to you, program director.